Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Unfinished. Unfinished is simply a state of being, you know, it's a mindset, but it's also me and you. So come with me as today we talk about the 5 pillars of peace in my personal life and that I try to implement as much as I can, regardless of the circumstance at hand. I'm excited to have you here, and I am excited to yap a little bit with y'all once again. And yeah, today I really haven't had a busy day. I'm currently off. This is my off day. It's a Tuesday. Club going up on a Tuesday. Yo, hence why we inside with some audio. No, I'm kidding. But we are inside. I was gonna record this outside, but it's currently 90 degrees. It feels like 100 because of this Kansas and Missouri humidity. Awful, disgusting, hate it. However, it's a part of the summer, and growing up in the Midwest, you would have thought, oh, they're used to it. And while that's true, every time it happens, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why are we going through this again? However, I'm not going to complain too much because it could be worse. It could be cold. It could be snowing, and I don't need it to be snowing right now. I would much rather have it be hot and humid, so can't complain too much, So we are recording this inside today. In a little corner, you see there's a plant right here. This is, once again, real, not AI. And then to the left of it is actually a vinyl player. I live at my uncle and aunt's house with their 2 kids, and he has a great vinyl collection going on. Currently, I was listening to the album Only by the Night by Kings of Leon. Great album. Haven't listened to it up until 2 days ago, and I recommend. I don't know if you know the song, but you know that I can use somebody, someone like you. Wow. Yeah, I'm not a singer, but that was a little snippet from the album. You should go stream if you have any interest after you listen to this, because today we are going to be talking about something that I really view fundamental to my wellness and just state of being as well, because these 5 P's that I'm going to be talking about play a role in my day-to-day, and I have yet to master them, let's be honest, as I am a lifelong learner, just as we all are. But coming to awareness and really striving to show up for myself in the lowest of lows and the highest of high moments with these 5 pillars of peace have helped me to become the person I am today. So let's get started. So the 5 pillars of peace. First one is presence. Second one is purpose. Third, perspective. Fourth, potential. And 5th is peace. Let's talk about presence first. What is presence? That's a great question. Simply a state of being and existing, just as we both are now. Maybe in different form, but we are practicing active presence. And I do find that nowadays it's a lot harder to be fully present in the moment for a number of reasons, but I do have to say a big reason is because of technology these days. I know, another technology rant. However, it's funny because I say that while I'm recording with the screen and like staring at technology. However, I just want to clarify, I do not think technology is all inherently bad. However, when it comes to our presence and just our attention spans too, because that's a whole different conversation, but maybe I'll try and tie it into this somehow. But with our presence, it's like nowadays you go around, it's constantly like this, like go to a concert. And mind you, I go to concerts, I want to say regularly, but I've been to a handful of concerts. I'm also a photographer, creative. So, like, I do typically have a camera on me, whether it be my phone or my actual camera. So, I am guilty of taking hundreds of photos, multiple videos throughout the concert, throughout the show. And I get back, home, and some days go by. I'll go through it. I'll look at some of them. It reminds me of the experience. Let's not lie. That's why all of us do it. A couple weeks go by. I don't even think about it like that anymore, if I'm being honest, because it's like that whole present moment of the show was the experience. Like, that's what we paid our tickets for. That's what we went for, right? And by being on our screens, it's a disconnect. It truly is. And in the moment, it really doesn't feel like it, because it's just another way of being present, at least so we think. However, we'll never be fully present, because if anything, we're going to look back onto those photos and videos. And while we may be able to envision and quote unquote relive the experience, nothing is going to be the actual moment of just having your full unfixated attention on that band, on whatever it may be, wherever it may be, And I think that has a lot to do and to tie into with relationships as well, platonic, romantic, all dynamics. Because the phone nowadays, I'll be hanging out with my friends, right? And I'm going to be on my phone occasionally, but generally when I hang out with people, I'm going to try to be off it unless I just don't want to say anything. And in those moments, it makes me think, it's like, am I enjoying my time, or are we all just on our phone? And it's like, why are we on our phones when the whole purpose of connection is to connect, to socialize, to enjoy each other's presence? And whilst you don't have to be in constant communication all the time, I do think in those moments of showing up, it's good to be off the screen, It really makes you realize it really was that damn phone. The parents and grandparents were right. They truly were. And I look back 30 years ago and even longer, but it would have been 1995, right? There was rarely few any smartphones, if any. I'm not gonna Google it right now, but like they had a majority of landline phones, right? Picking up the phone, ring ring. You gotta dial in. You gotta look for that phone book if you don't have your friend's contact. And you also just had to meet them IRL in the real world. Like, go out, go to these third spaces to connect, to actually socialize and be fully present in that moment and that experience as well. And that's also another reason why I love just the rave scene. A little side note, but I'm a raver. Gotta love raves. And I just wish I was around the time of the 1990s, because that scene, I just know it was a different experience. Because nowadays, if you go out to a rave or like a concert even too, and I would say with raves, it's a little less screen based. People aren't on their phones as much. However, in clubs, that's a different topic, because I don't want to get into clubs, but raves, I appreciate raves for that. I feel like more people are in there for that bodily experience of just feeling the movement, dancing, expressing ourselves, and we're not worried about what's going on in the outer world in that moment. We're just worried about the music and listening to it as it takes us on a journey. And that's why I love raves. It's all about being present, if I'm being honest. And in those cultures, in those environments, I really appreciate it for what it is. And I think that's also a part of why I want to speak about presence, because this past year I've been doing a lot of raves and getting more into that DJ culture scene and just going out more. And it's like, as I am experiencing all this newness, it is making me realize how much I value presence, and more specifically, how much our purpose goes into presence as well, which is the next pillar of peace. We all have a purpose. We all know our purpose internally. It was built into our DNA, and here it is our true north. Whether we have an awareness of what that purpose is in the moment, or if we are seeking it out in hopes to explore that purpose. That's the beautiful thing about purpose, is that it will constantly mold and evolve just as our souls do throughout this lifetime. I think something to help seek out our purpose if we have strayed off of it a little bit is to think back to our childhood. I want you to close your eyes, and if you're driving, don't close your eyes, obviously, but I want you to close your eyes and think about your childhood moments. Think about that time where your stress was the lowest. Think about your internal environment. What was it that you really wanted to pursue? What was it that made you just do and not think? What helped you get into that flow state the most? And when you have some thoughts in mind, I want you to think of if it is what you're doing right now in this life, if any of that aligns with your inner child and their sense of self and seeking out the enjoyment that they used to have when they were younger, that you used to have when you were younger. I'll give an example. For me, I used to grow up and wanted to be an actor and singer, which is, it's funny. I always used to think it was funny growing up because it's like, I could have never imagined myself doing that middle school to high school era. However, I was in like band and choir, but I'm more so speaking solo and acting and all of that. I used to want to live in LA for fucking sakes. Like, I had this huge fascination with California as a whole, Hollywood, don't even get me started. I can't tell you where that stemmed from. Actually, maybe it was the Disney Channel. Maybe it was the Disney Channel, Nickelodeon TV. Because that's a kid's dream. Let's be real here. Imagine just getting on TV, getting paid to laugh, but more so just the simple enjoyment of being creative and seeing these creative kids express themselves via television and all. So what I'm trying to say is that we were all born with an internal compass to discover our personal legend. I've been reading this book called The Alchemist lately. Shout out my coworker and friend Ricky because she put me onto it. It is a great book. I have yet to finish it, but I highly recommend. It really talks a lot about this so far in what I've read of how everyone has a purpose and it's up to us to find our own personal destiny. As soon as we come to awareness with what our purpose is, that is such a surreal feeling, I have to say. I am in the midst of reclaiming my purpose and reclaiming new purpose as well. This is a new beginning for me, and it's something I always have dreamed of doing for the last few years now, if I'm being honest. But it's always been in one of those where it's in the back of my head where it's like, oh, it'd be so cool to create a podcast one day or just to talk in front of the camera. I used to want to be on YouTube and stuff, and I'm actively living the life I dreamt of right now. And I think it's just that simply just showing up for yourself, seeing that you have always known what you have wanted to do in this lifetime with your soul, with your life. And it's ultimately up to you whether you choose to go about it and express yourself and seek out that purpose that you so desire, or just to sit back and say, eh, to not try. And I solely believe our purpose here is just to simply exist, to simply be present in the moment, in the scenarios that we go through, to live, to learn. And I think it can be daunting at times to feel like we have to have it all figured out as well. I mean, degree on average, and most people change what they want to do. Most people don't even use their degrees nowadays. So it's like I have beef with the whole US school system, but that could be an episode on its own. But long story short, what I'm saying is we know our purpose, and don't ever let anybody stray you off your purpose, off your sense of direction, because you have always known where you're going to be in life, who you're going to be in life. You've always known your inner child. You've always known yourself. And it's more so just about getting connected to your inner child again. And as soon as you do, it's going to feel like everything clicked once again. Everything is natural. Everything is aligning on divine timing, because it is. And that plays a huge role into perspective, the third pillar. Perspective is everything. It truly is everything. Two people could be living the same life, similar life, and one could be in a state of pure bliss, pure happiness, whilst the other could be in a state of constantly wanting more material items, more money, more, just more. And it's just so funny because what more could you ask for, you know? What more could you ask for other than just simply being here, living in your purpose, living in your truth? That will all come on divine timing if it's aligned for you. And if you believe in yourself, most importantly, because your perspective on life shapes you or breaks you, and it controls the reality you live in ultimately as well. I always like to say rejection is redirection, because it is. It's like you may have been living your purpose in this perspective of life, and it may have not inherently been aligned with what you needed. However, there's always that moment where, whether it's you, whether it's external circumstances, ultimately it's the universe who will put you on the right track again to realign you with your perspective and purpose in your life. And by doing so, by allowing yourself to kind of not maintain, because let's be honest here, it can be hard to have a sense of self-confidence in the terms of your perspective on life, how everything is going to work out, even though it truly will. And that's kind of what's helped me. I'm speaking a lot of this because it is based off of personal experience, and I've been at a point in my life early on where my perspective was just shit, and it was poor, and I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really living the life I wanted to live. I wasn't really doing the things I wanted to be doing. And it felt like I was stuck. It felt like I was allowing other people to control my perspective on life. And I don't think that's a good state to be in, because it's so easy to become distracted when you're operating on other people's timeline. And that's why I think it's so crucial to allow yourself to discover yourself, allow yourself to have these moments of solitude and isolation and just silence in the brain, because we were constantly thinking nowadays. There's so much information being spewed onto us, and it's up to us to filter out that and to find our sense of self through it all. It can be hard, but just know that you will. And so with presence, purpose, and perspective, these three go hand in hand into discovering your potential, which is the fourth pillar. Potential is one of those things where it's unbounded, let's be honest. Your potential, I want you to say it with me. My potential is unbound. My potential is limitless. I have everything I need to succeed in this moment. Because it's true, you do. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now, you do. We all have our potential, and it's ultimately up to us to live it out. And it's just a matter of showing up, I think, too, with that, because there's a lot of things that want to try us these days, and a lot of distractions that can make us go off the path and maybe lose our potential. And in those moments, we can go about that. We can see what happens if we, take a different path, take a different perspective, go about it a different way. However, as I mentioned earlier, we all have our internal compass that points north. And by seeing potential in others, I think it can be a double-edged sword. Let's talk about that, because I'm one of those people who I love to see the good in everyone, because I see good in myself, and I just love to view life from an optimistic perspective, because why would I choose to suffer? And while it's good to see the potential in others, I think it can be taken advantage of at times, so to speak. I think people can take advantage of our potential as well. And it goes both ways, don't get me wrong, but when we give more potential and devotion to people in our life, it can harm us. It can help us, but it can harm us just as much. And it really is about filtering out the bullshit and finding that inner peace and sense of knowing that where we are in this lifetime, what we're doing in this lifetime, it all has a purpose. It all has a reason. And in this season, that just so happens to be peace for me, which concludes us to our fifth and final pillar of peace, which is peace. Peace for me is something I seek out in all aspects. I feel it in this moment. I feel it internally and externally. I feel it in everyday life. I feel it through the connection of others. I feel it through the connection of my passions. I feel it all around. And it's one of those feelings that you just have to embody it to feel it. I'm trying to think of ways to describe peace to me. I would say calmness, serenity, and just overall grounding. I really seek peace in all aspects of my life, and I attract peace. That is a good manifestation to say if you want to attract more peace. I am the embodiment of peace itself. I am peace. It's so surreal. I can feel it in this moment right now. It's just one of those feelings that you have to live it to know it, and everybody's peace looks different. And I think an important part about peace is protection. You want to protect your peace. You want to ensure that you are unbothered by life's challenges, what life throws your way. And ultimately, to be at a state of internal peace is to be unbothered. And that is something I seek long term in my life. Just imagine how good it feels to remain unbothered to all of the situations that come your way, to have an internal sense of knowing that you are connected with your highest form, with spirit, and that everything works out for you, because it does. And I think that is my definition of being unbothered, just to have an inner compass and inner knowing. So it is a privilege to be at peace. We'll just say that, especially in this day and age, 2025. There's a lot going on externally in the world right now, and it feels like it won't be better. It won't get better, but it will. It will. There's no other option, because it will. And that may just so happen to look like these pillars breaking down, being renovated, being resurfaced, being torn apart in hopes in building something new, because you can't go through change without it being transformative to some level, and you can't live in a state of serenity and peace without first experiencing the opposite, you know. It makes me really think about life, and just every situation has a lesson to be learned from. And with lessons learned, that just means more resilience is built. So I am blessed to be stressed. I am blessed to be stressed because ultimately it helps with the long term, which is peace and being unbothered, which is the 5 pillars of peace. A little review. Number 1, presence. 2, purpose. 3, perspective. 4, potential. And 5, peace. All of these aspects I really try to seek out in my day-to-day life, and I hope you do the same, honestly. I hope you learned something today. I hope this was somewhat insightful, or even if you just stuck around this far, thank you for showing up just as well. It can be hard to show up for yourself, and just by doing it, it's the consistency, I think. It's knowing that you are able to be consistent in all aspects, and I think this 5 pillars of peace helps with consistency as well, because it keeps the brain sane and it keeps me grounded and stable. So thank you for tuning in, truly. Thank you for listening to some of my brain. Thank you for being here once again. I want to look forward to this next episode where I get to talk more about what peace and what the summer has looked like. I hope you learned something. I hope you are able to kind of resonate with these 5 pillars of peace. And I would really love to know if there was one that really stuck out to you the most, or maybe one that you're going through or experiencing more so currently in your life. Let me know in the comments. You should also follow me, aka subscribe, aka turn post noties on, so you can stay tuned for the next episode, which will be out next Wednesday. As always, thank you for tuning in to Unfinished. I'm your host, AJ, and I will see you when I see you, whether that be soon or later. So until then, I hope you find internal peace.